Good morning, friends. Somebody has brought to my attention the fact that the second half of today's video, which is perhaps one or two before this one, has a problem with the sound. So I'm going to reread now the second half of that message where the sound seems to go wrong from about 8 minutes onwards, and where it just gets to the subject, love does not boast. So please, if you're tuning into this video, please go back to the first one marked June the 14th and listen to that one up to about 8 minutes, where I'm sure you'll see it starts to go wrong, and then please come back and listen to this one for the second half. Love does not boast. Like the sin of envy, boasting is a sinful preoccupation with ourselves. People who boast often are just craving attention. They want others to recognise their abilities or knowledge or success, or perhaps even their suffering for God. And because they're longing for recognition, perhaps they speak too highly and too much of themselves, although there may not be too much in what they're saying. Boasting has long been a problem for religious people. Think of the sanctimonious trumpet-blowing Pharisees who craved the attention of the people in Jesus' day. They were religious show-offs, and Jesus pointed out how they loved the front seats in the synagogue and respectful greetings in the street and praise for their charity. Likewise, Christians in the church at Corinth were boasting about their superior wisdom or their favourite teacher's speaking skills and their own extraordinary spiritual experiences. They were full of themselves, and so they were not full of love. One time I was at a church conference that had hundreds of book and ministry exhibits, and the book table next to ours was a ministry booth which had quite a well-known pastor and author at it, and I noticed that the entire time he talked non-stop about himself. In fact, the conference was for 2 days, and we listened to him praising himself for the whole time. He went on about how large his church was and how many people were on his staff and how much money they gave, and he used to drop the names of famous people he knew and places he had preached. He was a boaster. Boasting, however, helps nobody. Boasting is known as being empty, and indeed it is. The writer Scroggie says, "There is no other kind of boasting. The very nature and essence of a boast is emptiness." And it is an advertisement of underlying poverty. It does not build up or serve the church. It does not honour Christ. It can intimidate and divide people and provokes others to envy. And it's particularly serious in a leader, marring their character. We want to be leaders who are honest about what God has done for us and to point attention to Him. As it says in the Proverbs, "Let another praise you and not your own mouth." Boasters build themselves up. Jealous people tear others down. But loving people build up others. Love promotes and praises others. It is self-effacing and shies away from speaking of itself, except when testimony can be an encouragement to others. Those who are possessed of Christ's love delight in focusing attention on others and on Him, pushing God to the centre of the stage and shining the spotlight there. Thinking about spiritual giftedness, Paul writes, "I say to everyone among you, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought to, but think with sober judgment." This doesn't imply that we never talk about ourselves or let others inquire about how ministry is going, but there is a line between speaking of ourselves boastfully or non-boastfully. Like Paul and Barnabas, ministers and missionaries need to report on God's work through them and their labour to those who support them. Skillful teachers will use illustrations taken from their personal experiences to communicate effectively about the gospel, but without boasting, as it says in Galatians 2. The difference is that when someone's boasting, they're using the stories to fill up their own need for attention. A missionary friend on the way back to Africa found himself on board a ship with the young Billy Graham, and there witnessed love that does not brag. Graham was on his way to the London Crusade, and as the two talked on the voyage, something about Billy Graham touched my friend very deeply. Graham asked all about my friend's life and ministry in Africa and was really interested in what he had to say. My friend observed that Graham rarely spoke about himself or his amazing effectiveness as an evangelist. At the end of the voyage, the missionary asked the young evangelist how he could pray for him, and the answer was, "Pray that I will be a humble man." That prayer many years ago reflected a heart of wisdom and love. And decades later, it is apparent that the gift of success is not a criticism that can be levelled against Billy Graham. There is something to learn for his example. Humble people are not self-absorbed. Instead, they promise to promote and praise others according to the more excellent way of love shown to us by Christ. God bless you, brothers and sisters.